Welcome to the channel, viewers. Dr. J.W. Ayub on the subject, Who is Ruling Australia? A Behavioural Political Analysis. When Australians started realising internal fear was becoming a form of governance. In the last episode, I examined conscience being conditioned into silence before formal suppression was required. In this episode, I advance the psychological consequence further. Internal fear itself becoming a governing mechanism beneath administrative continuity and constitutional forgetting. And at first, the fear still appeared personal. The fear of saying too much, the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of professional consequence, fear of social isolation, the fear of institutional interpretation. Australians told themselves caution was wisdom. Then slowly another recognition began surfacing beneath the constitutional fatigue. Internal fear was no longer merely protecting people from danger. It was helping govern them. And that distinction changes the entire psychological structure, because external control becomes less necessary when citizens begin internally managing themselves according to anticipated institutional consequences. The establishment does not need to speak every prohibition aloud when the population has already learned which truths seem unsafe to carry visibly. And this is where constitutional freedom begins weakening beneath lawful appearance. Australia's constitutional Christian inheritance assumed conscience required protection, precisely because human authority would always be tempted to exceed its limits over speech, belief, family, worship, identity, and moral formation. But once divine sovereign restraint weakens, institutions increasingly expand through behavioural anticipation. Citizens begin asking, will this be punished? Will this be reported? Will this damage employment? Will this invite scrutiny? Will this make me appear dangerous? Will this place my conscience outside approved language? And that interior interrogation becomes governance, not through visible chains, but through psychological containment. And the paradox deepens further. Institutions continue speaking freedom, inclusion, safety, democracy, and public well-being, while citizens increasingly rehearse silence before speaking, soften truth before expressing it, and negotiate internally against conscience before any external authority intervenes. That adaptation becomes constitutionally catastrophic, because once citizens carry the censor inside themselves, establishment power no longer requires constant force to preserve dominance. The population becomes easier to manage, fragment, redirect, intimidate, and distance from inherited protections designed to restrain power itself. And this is why lawful remembrance matters. Truth precedes permission. Conscience precedes administration. God stands above government, the Christian God. Humanity, human dignity precedes institutional approval. Speech remains necessary because moral reality cannot survive permanently beneath managed silence. The issue confronting Australia is therefore no longer merely whether people are formally free. The deeper issue is whether citizens remain internally free enough to exercise freedoms they technically still possess. And that question now sits beneath public caution, private fear, constitutional fatigue, psychological compliance, and administrative expansion beneath democratic continuity. And I would ask you to listen to my closing statement very carefully. And somewhere beneath that internalized fear, another truth steadily emerges. A civilization begins losing freedom once citizens govern themselves through fear of institutions that were originally meant to remain restrained by conscience, law, and divine sovereignty. I'm Dr. J.W. Ayub, theologist since 1994. Like and subscribe to encourage me to continue to do more, comment to educate me, and share to help somebody else. In the next episode of Who is Ruling Australia? A behavioural political analysis, I will look at when Australians started realising freedom without courage becomes decoration.